Everyone settle in, roll cameras, and action! I want full steam from the locomotive as it crosses the bridge.
The rocket and feather scam, why gas prices never drop. New Zealand fuel prices just snapped, pushing past $3 per liter almost overnight. But while Kiwis are panic buying, the data reveals a shocking contradiction about our actual supply. In this video, we investigate the 2026 fuel crisis and why you're paying wartime prices for petrol already sitting in local tanks. We break down the Strait of Hormuz blockade, the scale of the global oil supply shock, the controversial closure of the Marsden Point refinery, why prices rise like a rocket but fall like a feather, the hidden 32-day supply keeping NZ's logistics network alive, how the global energy market forces local importers into a bidding war, and the future of NZ transport. Is the shift to EVs now inevitable?
In March 2026, the cost of driving a car in New Zealand snapped. Almost overnight, retail boards across the country pushed past $3 a liter for standard petrol. The public reaction was immediate and fierce. Motorists flooded independent retailers, draining Goal station pumps completely dry within hours. In the aviation sector, Air New Zealand was forced to cancel over 1,000 flights. The catalyst for this domestic chaos was thousands of miles away. Kinetic warfare in the Middle East had effectively blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical artery for energy transport. But if you look closely at the data from that week, a contradiction emerges. Despite the panic buying at the pump, New Zealand was not actually running out of fuel. At the very moment consumers were panic buying, the massive storage tanks at the Marsden Point terminal held the equivalent of 12 days of total national consumption, sitting safely on shore. Beyond those physical tanks, another 20 days' worth of refined product was already on the water, resting securely in the holds of vessels currently charting a course for New Zealand ports. New Zealanders were effectively paying wartime prices for petrol that was already sitting safely in Whangarei or cruising calmly across the Pacific. Every dollar spent at the pump was being dictated by a crisis that hadn't physically reached the country yet. This animated globe shows the supply shock scale. Red zones highlight the Persian Gulf, where 15% of global oil is trapped. But the energy supply chain doesn't move at the speed of news. Supertankers travel at 15 knots, literally the speed of a bicycle. Because of that agonizing travel time, the fuel pulling into New Zealand terminals in early March actually left the Middle East weeks ago, long before the first missiles were fired. Nations with shorter transit routes and shallower storage buffers felt the physical loss immediately. In places like Pakistan, reserves hit absolute zero, forcing the government to close schools and mandate work-from-home orders to conserve remaining drops of petrol. New Zealand, by contrast, was existing in an artificial lull. The physical shockwave of empty tanks was still weeks away, but the financial shockwave had already breached the borders. To understand why, we have to look at the unified global energy market. Consuming nations don't have exclusive rights to supply. They must outbid each other for access to the same limited pool of ships. When supply constricts, vessels like the Yasa Hawk, a massive tanker idling at sea, simply wait for desperate countries to bid up its cargo. Even though New Zealand has fuel securely onshore today, local importers must actively participate in that global bidding war to secure their next shipment. And the cost to secure that future fuel has skyrocketed. This graph maps wholesale oil costs against retail pump prices, illustrating rockets and feathers. When wholesale costs jump, retail prices shoot up like a rocket. But when global prices drop, retail prices drift down like a feather, capturing the widening profit margin. The price at the pump isn't paying for the petrol going into the car. It is funding the replacement petrol currently being fought over in the global market. When the price surge hit, domestic political arguments immediately targeted the controversial 2022 closure of New Zealand's only oil refinery at Marsden Point, blaming the shutdown for the country's vulnerability. But a functioning refinery would still have relied on importing 98% of its crude oil from the exact Middle Eastern region that was currently under blockade. Transitioning Marsden Point to an import-only terminal actually freed up existing infrastructure, allowing operators to repurpose massive crude tanks into expanded onshore storage for ready-to-use jet fuel and diesel. While that massive storage buffer cannot insulate consumers from global price spikes, it is the only structural defense preventing the nation's logistics networks, hospitals, and supermarkets from grinding to a physical halt. Without that buffer, the economy would face demand destruction. the threshold where energy becomes so expensive that basic economic activity, travel, and logistics simply cease to exist. As long as the economy runs on imported fossil fuels, it will remain chained to the extreme volatility of distant geopolitical conflicts. Local storage tanks offer a temporary shield, but they cannot stop the financial gravity of a global market. The March price spike triggered a record surge in local electric vehicle sales and a renewed push for sustainable aviation fuels, a calculated shift away from the volatility of foreign supply chains.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this, make sure to like and follow and hit subscribe for more great content. Thanks for watching.